Love is often seen as an unbreakable bond, a powerful force that can overcome anything. But what happens when that love is built on secrets and lies? This is a story where a wedding, meant to mark the beginning of a joyful life together, turns into a nightmare of betrayal and heartbreak. Set in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, this tragic tale unfolds behind the walls of what should have been the perfect wedding. Joy and excitement hide dark secrets waiting to be revealed. This is the story of Ryan, Mia, and Adam, three people whose lives are about to change forever because of the choices they've made and the truths they've hidden. Our story revolves around Mia, the stunning bride, Ryan, her devoted groom, and Adam, Ryan's best friend. Their lives are deeply connected by fate and friendship. But beneath the surface of their close bond lies a hidden truth. Ryan and Adam share a connection far deeper than anyone could imagine. A connection that threatens to destroy everything on this fateful night. As Ryan stands at the altar, he is torn. On one side is the life he's about to promise to Mia, and on the other is the secret life he's been sharing with Adam. This secret, if revealed, will shatter everything in its path. Every story has its start. A place where friendships grow, secrets are kept, and lives intertwine. This story begins with a friendship, one that grew over years of shared memories, laughter, and silent understanding. Ryan and Adam weren't just friends. They were each other's closest allies, standing by each other in a world that often felt too overwhelming to face alone. From the outside, their friendship seemed normal, strong, and unshakable. But beneath the surface, something more was brewing, something neither could admit, even to themselves. Their bond only grew stronger over time. Ryan and Adam were inseparable, the kind of friends who could finish each other's sentences or understand each other's thoughts without needing to speak. When Mia entered their lives, she was warmly welcomed into their close-knit circle. She saw two men who deeply cared for each other, and their closeness made her admire Ryan even more. To her, it was proof of his capacity for love and loyalty. But there were things Mia couldn't see. There were moments between Ryan and Adam that carried a weight she would never understand. A glance held just a second too long, a brief touch, or a simple word exchanged between them spoke volumes. Yet, these moments passed unnoticed by her as she basked in the happiness of their shared lives. As the wedding day drew closer, Ryan began to feel a growing anxiety he couldn't shake. He truly loved Mia, but something else lingered in the shadows of his mind. Something that had been hidden for far too long, waiting to surface. Adam noticed it, too. The way Ryan's smile no longer reached his eyes, the way his laughter seemed hollow and forced. Yet Mia, lost in the joy of her upcoming wedding, remained blissfully unaware of the emotional storm brewing beneath the surface. To truly understand the depth of this story, we must go back to a time before the engagement, before the wedding plans, to a single moment when everything changed. It was an evening like any other. Ryan and Adam were alone, as they often were, enjoying a quiet moment together after a long day. But this time, something felt different. A tension hung in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. This tension had always been there, lingering in the background, but they had never dared to cross the invisible line that defined their friendship. On this night, however, they did. A glance lingered a moment too long. A hand brushed against a shoulder with more meaning than usual. And in that instant, the boundary that had kept their relationship simple and safe was shattered. What followed was a night filled with confusion, passion, and fear. They were no longer just friends. They had become something else, something they couldn't easily define and knew they could never reveal. It was something neither Ryan nor Adam could easily define, and something they knew they could never reveal. In the days and weeks that followed, they buried their secret deep, hiding it from the world and especially from Mia. But with every stolen glance, every secret meeting, the weight of their deception grew heavier. Ryan was torn between two worlds: the life he had always known, the life he was expected to live, and the life he had glimpsed, one filled with a love that was as exhilarating as it was terrifying. Adam felt it too, the dread of what they had done and the even greater fear of what might happen if the truth ever came to light. As the wedding day approached, the tension between Ryan and Adam became impossible to ignore. They tried to pretend that nothing had changed, that their relationship was still the same as it had always been. But deep down, they both knew it wasn't. The cracks were starting to show. Ryan's behavior grew erratic. His mood swung wildly, one moment filled with joy, the next overcome with despair. He threw himself into the wedding preparations with an intensity that surprised everyone around him. But those closest to him could see the strain, the signs that something was deeply wrong. Adam, on the other hand, appeared calm and composed on the surface. Inside, though, he was a storm of emotions: love, guilt, jealousy, and a profound sense of loss. Meanwhile, Mia remained blissfully unaware. She was focused on the wedding details, the dress, the flowers, the guest list. Her heart was full of excitement and anticipation as she dreamed of the life she was about to start with Ryan. She didn't notice the way he would sometimes stare into the distance when he thought no one was watching, or the slight tremble in his hands when he spoke about their future. She couldn't see how he occasionally pulled away from her touch, as if he was afraid. Afraid of something, or perhaps someone. And then, there were the fleeting moments between Ryan and Adam, moments that spoke volumes. The moments between Ryan and Adam were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they spoke volumes. A glance held for a second too long, a hand brushing against his arm, a whispered exchange in the quiet of a crowded room. These fleeting interactions were brief, yet for those who noticed, they carried an air of unease. Adam was struggling, too. He was caught between his love for Ryan and the fear of what was to come. He knew the wedding would change everything. Once the vows were spoken, whatever their relationship had become would have to end. The closer the wedding day approached, the more unbearable the tension became. Ryan found himself waking in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, his heart racing. He would lie there staring at the ceiling, his thoughts consumed by what he was about to do and what he was about to lose. Adam remained a constant in his life, but an invisible wall had risen between them, a distance created by fear, guilt, and the inevitable truth that the life they once knew was unraveling. With each passing day, the suspense built, and the tension between Ryan and Adam grew heavier. The wedding day loomed ahead like a storm cloud, dark and threatening to tear everything apart. Ryan felt trapped in a web of his own making. No matter which choice he made, someone was bound to be hurt. He just didn't know how much damage would be done, or how soon. At last, the wedding day arrived. A day meant to be filled with joy and celebration. But for Ryan, standing at the altar, there was no relief, no happiness. Instead, his heart pounded with a suffocating anxiety that threatened to consume him. As Mia began her walk down the aisle, every step she took felt like another nail in the coffin of the life Ryan had envisioned. Adam stood just a few feet away, serving as Ryan's best man, a role he had played for years in more ways than one. But today, the title felt heavier than ever before. Ryan's mind raced as he recited his vows. The words felt empty, hollow, as if they didn't belong to him. He glanced at Adam, who managed to force a smile, but Ryan could see the pain hidden in his eyes, the silent struggle of a man watching the person he loved commit to someone else. The ceremony continued as planned. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, and the couple was pronounced husband and wife. To the guests, it was a moment of joy, but for Ryan, every word and every gesture was a piercing reminder of the truth he was concealing and the love he could never openly claim. At the reception, the mood was lively and celebratory, but Ryan was far from joyful. His thoughts swirled in a chaotic storm, torn between the commitment he had just made to Mia and the undeniable connection he shared with Adam. Mia, glowing with happiness, remained unaware of the turmoil within her new husband. However, as the evening wore on, she started to notice the cracks. Ryan's smiles felt forced, his laughter empty. Adam, too, struggled. Each congratulatory toast, every polite smile he gave, felt like a sharp blade to his heart. Throughout the night, he and Ryan exchanged fleeting, tense glances. Their unspoken secret loomed over them like a dark shadow, inescapable and suffocating. For everyone else, the day was filled with love and celebration. But for Ryan and Adam, it was a bittersweet reminder of the truth they were trying so hard to bury. As the reception drew to a close, Ryan's unease became more noticeable. Mia began to pick up on his distracted behavior. She tried to attribute it to exhaustion from the day's excitement, but something about his distant demeanor unsettled her. Ryan, who had always been attentive and warm, now seemed distant, almost detached. Each time she tried to engage him, his responses were curt, his gaze wandering as if searching for something, or someone, beyond her reach. Ryan's gaze wandered around the room, as if searching for something or someone. The truth was, he couldn't stop thinking about Adam. The affair, a recent and unexpected development, had thrown him into chaos. Their connection, which had quietly ignited in the days leading up to the wedding, was now impossible to ignore. On what should have been the happiest day of his life, Ryan was consumed by guilt and confusion. He tried to focus on Mia, to be the husband she deserved, but his mind kept drifting back to Adam. The guilt gnawed at him, and the burden of his double life was becoming unbearable. As the evening wore on, Ryan's anxiety intensified. He knew he needed to talk to Adam, to find some way to make sense of the turmoil inside him. But he couldn't do it here. Not with Mia nearby, watching him with such love and trust. Adam, meanwhile, was fighting his own demons. The affair had been brief but intense, a whirlwind of emotions neither of them had anticipated. Seeing Ryan with Mia was more painful than Adam had imagined. Every smile they shared, every touch between the newlyweds, was a bitter reminder of what he could never have. Adam could see the conflict in Ryan's eyes, the way he avoided looking at Mia for too long, the way his gaze kept returning to Adam across the room. For weeks, they had been hiding their relationship, but tonight the strain of secrecy was overwhelming. The tension between them was palpable, noticeable only to those who knew what to look for. As the evening came to an end, Ryan and Mia retreated to their bridal suite. Mia, still basking in the joy of their wedding, looked forward to a romantic night with her new husband. But Ryan couldn't bring himself to engage. The idea of being intimate with Mia felt wrong, like he was betraying not just her but also Adam. He made excuses, blaming exhaustion and the stress of the day. Mia, though slightly disappointed, accepted his explanation. She smiled, trying to be understanding, but Ryan could feel the weight of his choices pressing down on him, leaving no space for peace. Mia, though disappointed by Ryan's excuse that the stress of the wedding had drained him, accepted it without pressing further. She kissed him goodnight, trying to be understanding, but a tiny seed of doubt had already taken root in her mind. Ryan lay beside her, staring up at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. He knew he was hurting her. He knew Mia deserved more than what he could offer, but he couldn't bring himself to keep pretending. The guilt, the fear, and the overwhelming love he felt for Adam were too much to bear. The weight of it all kept him restless, his thoughts too loud to allow any peace. After what felt like endless hours of tossing and turning, Ryan made a decision. He needed to talk to Adam, to find some way to make sense of the chaos they had created. Maybe, just maybe, a conversation would bring him clarity. Some form of peace to help him figure out how to move forward. Unable to sleep, Ryan carefully slipped out of bed, taking care not to wake Mia. The halls of the hotel were dark and eerily silent, amplifying the turmoil within him. As he walked toward Adam's room, his heart pounded, not with anticipation but with fear. He had to confront Adam, to find a way to resolve the unbearable tension that had been building between them for weeks. With each step closer to Adam's door, Ryan felt his feet grow heavier, as if his body was resisting him, trying to pull him back. When he finally knocked, the pause that followed was agonizing. At last, the door opened, and Adam stood there, his eyes mirroring the same inner conflict Ryan felt. Adam's vulnerability was stark. He was dressed only in his underwear, and his expression revealed everything they had both been hiding. No words were needed. They both knew why Ryan had come. Ryan stepped inside, and the door closed behind him with a sense of finality that made his heart sink. They sat down, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions. Ryan opened his mouth, trying to start the conversation, to talk about what had happened and figure out how to move forward without destroying everything. But the words wouldn't come. Silence enveloped the room, heavy and suffocating, as both men struggled with the storm of emotions they couldn't put into words. The silence in the room was heavy, each man lost in his own thoughts, unable to break the thick tension between them. Finally, Ryan spoke. His voice was quiet but filled with emotion as he confessed his love for Adam. He admitted he couldn't let go, that he didn't know how to move forward with Mia while his heart still belonged to someone else. He asked Adam the same question he had been asking himself over and over. What were they supposed to do now? Before they could find an answer, the emotions that had been building all night erupted. The need to feel something, anything, to escape the pain and confusion overcame them both. In a moment of weakness, they gave in to the desire that had been simmering beneath the surface. The affair, which had begun only recently, unfolded once more in the dim quiet of Adam's room. Both men were fully aware of the consequences, but they couldn't stop themselves. It was brief, desperate, a final attempt to hold on to something they both knew they were on the verge of losing. But just as quickly as it began, it was over, leaving them both with an even deeper sense of guilt and dread. Ryan pulled away, his mind racing with thoughts of Mia and the life he had just committed to. The future now felt more uncertain than ever. As the reality of what they had done sank in, Ryan realized he couldn't go back to the bridal suite, couldn't face Mia with the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, overwhelmed by how everything had gone so wrong. Adam, too, was consumed by his thoughts. He understood that they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The night, which had begun with so much hope and promise, had turned into a nightmare from which there was no escape. Meanwhile, in the bridal suite, Mia stirred in her sleep. Reaching out for Ryan, her hand met the cold, empty side of the bed. Jolting awake, panic began to rise as she realized he wasn't there. She called out for him, her voice trembling with worry. Mia called Ryan's name, her voice trembling, but there was no response. Her heart began to race. Slipping out of bed, she pulled on her robe and stepped into the hallway. The hotel was eerily quiet, the only sound her soft footsteps echoing in the stillness. A growing sense of dread filled her as she walked, her mind spinning with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Her intuition led her to Adam's room. She paused outside the door, a knot tightening in her stomach as she raised her hand to knock. One soft knock brought no response. She knocked again, harder this time, but still nothing. With each unanswered knock, her anxiety grew, her thoughts clouded with fear and suspicion. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open. Adam stood there, his eyes wide with surprise and guilt. He was dressed only in his underwear, his vulnerability plain for her to see. The sight sent a shockwave through Mia. She didn't need to see Ryan to understand what had happened. The truth, which had been lurking in the shadows, now stared her in the face. Undeniable and devastating. The man she had just married, the man she thought she knew, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. In that moment, Mia's world came crashing down. As the door opened wider, Mia froze in the doorway. Her mind struggled to process the scene before her. Adam, standing there with guilt etched across his face, and beyond him, Ryan, her husband of only a few hours, seated on the edge of the bed. His head hung low, his face a mask of shame and despair. The truth, which had been gnawing at the edges of Mia's awareness, hit her with full force. Betrayal, humiliation, rage. A tidal wave of emotions surged through her, too powerful to control. Her voice trembled as she demanded answers, her words sharp and venomous. Ryan, desperate and cornered, tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Adam, equally terrified, stood silently, his guilt written all over him. Adam could only watch as the situation spiraled out of control. Mia's anger boiled over, her hands trembling as she pointed accusingly at Ryan. Her voice grew louder, more frantic with every word. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have ever imagined. With each passing moment, her pain transformed into something darker, something far more dangerous. In a moment of overwhelming emotion, Mia lunged at Ryan, her fury driving her every action. Chaos erupted in the room, the tension that had been building all night snapping like a taut wire. Ryan tried to hold her back, his voice pleading for her to calm down, but his words fell on deaf ears. The betrayal had shattered something deep inside Mia, something that could never be repaired. Adam, caught between his love for Ryan and the guilt of their affair, stood frozen. He could do nothing but watch in horror as the confrontation escalated, spiraling out of control faster than anyone could stop it. As Mia's emotions reached their peak, she was consumed by a blind rage. Grabbing the nearest object, a heavy decorative lamp, she swung it with all her strength. The room fell into stunned silence as the lamp connected with Ryan's head, sending him crashing to the floor. Blood quickly pooled around him, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Adam rushed to Ryan's side, his hands trembling as he desperately tried to stop the bleeding. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Ryan's lifeless eyes stared back at him, the horror of what had just happened sinking in. Mia stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the reality of her actions. Slowly, the gravity of what she had done began to dawn on her, but the rage hadn't fully subsided. In her grief and madness, she turned her fury toward Adam, blaming him for everything. For the betrayal, for the destruction of her life, for the humiliation and the unbearable loss. Her pain and anger converged into a single, unstoppable force. Before she could think, before she could stop herself, she lashed out again. Mia lashed out again, her hands driven by a desperate need to end the nightmare. Adam, caught off guard, barely had time to react before her attack landed. The room descended into chaos, Mia's grief and rage consuming her entirely. The sound of her sobs filled the space, mingling with Adam's desperate pleas. He could see the inevitable end approaching but was powerless to stop it. The second blow struck Adam down. His body collapsed beside Ryan's, the blood from both men pooling together on the cold, unforgiving floor. Then silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to echo the finality of what had just occurred. Mia stood in the middle of the room, her breath coming in ragged gasps as her mind struggled to process what she had done. The lamp slipped from her trembling hands, clattering to the floor beside the lifeless bodies of her husband and his best friend. The enormity of her actions hit her like a physical blow. The harsh, cold reality of the situation settled over her with unbearable clarity. Frantic, Mia dropped to her knees beside Ryan, her hands shaking as she reached out to him. She tried to shake him awake, as if somehow he could get up and this nightmare could end. But Ryan didn't move. His lifeless eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. The weight of what she had done washed over Mia in waves, each one heavier than the last. Her cries grew louder, more desperate, as she realized there was no undoing what had happened. The man she had loved, the man she had vowed to spend her life with, was gone, taken by her own hand in a moment of uncontrollable rage. Beside him lay Adam, his face frozen in an expression of shock and fear, his body just as still, just as cold. Mia's mind raced, her thoughts spiraling into a frantic attempt to make sense of the carnage. She looked around the room, her eyes wild, searching desperately for something, anything, that could make this all go away. But there was nothing. No escape, no way to undo the devastation Mia had caused. The blood on her hands, on the floor, on the walls, it was all too real, too final. In her despair, Mia frantically tried to clean. She scrubbed at her bloodied hands, her sobs echoing off the walls, but it was no use. The blood wouldn't come off, and with every passing moment, the futility of her efforts became more apparent. What had once been a place of joy and celebration was now a scene of unspeakable horror, the shattered remnants of a love that had been twisted beyond recognition. Exhausted and broken, Mia collapsed on the floor beside Ryan and Adam. Her body shook with uncontrollable sobs, the weight of what she had done pressing down on her. The realization of what she had lost settled over her like a suffocating blanket. She was alone now, completely and utterly alone. The echoes of her actions were her only company. The choices she had made, the lives she had destroyed, bore down on her with crushing weight. One question looped endlessly in her mind. What now? As the first rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, Mia knew there was no escaping the consequences of her actions. Whether to flee or to surrender, she didn't know. But one thing was certain. Her life, once filled with promise and love, was now irreparably changed. Shattered beyond repair by a single brutal night. The night that began with the promise of a lifetime together had ended in tragedy. What should have been a celebration of love, commitment, and a new beginning had turned into a nightmare of betrayal, violence, and death. The wedding, once a symbol of hope and unity, now lay in ruin. Its joy was replaced by sorrow, its vows overshadowed by the dark secrets that had unraveled them. The empty wedding venue, now a crime scene, echoed with the silence of lives lost and a future destroyed. Mia, the bride who had dreamed of a life filled with love, sat alone amidst the wreckage, the weight of her actions more than she could bear. Mia now sits alone, her tear-streaked face reflecting the profound loss and regret weighing heavily on her heart. This was a night where love turned to hatred, trust gave way to betrayal, and lives were taken by the very hands that once vowed to protect them. As we reflect on the events of this tragic night, we are left grappling with its broader implications. Ryan, Adam, and Mia were all victims. Victims of societal pressures, hidden desires, and the secrets they felt compelled to keep. But those very secrets, buried beneath layers of shame and fear, became the catalysts for their destruction. What does this story reveal about the human condition? About how we navigate love, loyalty, and identity in a world that often forces us to choose between our true selves and the roles we are expected to play. The wedding rings, once symbols of unity, now lie discarded, broken representations of a union that was meant to be but never truly existed. And there, in the midst of it all, stands Mia, isolated, alone, confronting the unbearable consequences of actions driven by heartbreak and rage. This story forces us to confront the devastating effects of betrayal, the weight of secrets, and the ultimate cost of living a life that isn't true to who we are. It serves as a stark warning. Love can quickly turn to hatred, and the fragile bonds of trust can be shattered by secrets too painful to bear. As the scene fades to black, we leave you with this final thought. In a world where the truth is often hidden beneath layers of deception, what risks do we take by living a life that denies our true selves? And when those secrets come to light, who ultimately pays the price? This is a story of love lost, trust betrayed, and lives irrevocably changed. A story that lingers long after the final word is spoken, urging us to reflect on the choices we make, the lives we lead, and the people we choose to become. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, please give this video a like and subscribe for more.